Hi, I'm Justine Diamond from the Enable Community Foundation, and we're here on August 1st to update with our interns. Looking forward to what's gone on this week. So we're going to hand this right over to Tricia, and we'll get going. So Tricia, it's up to you.
Okay, I am gonna screen share. Okay. All right, can everybody see my screen?
We can.
Great. So this is just another weekly update. This week we focused primarily on the therapy testing and impressions. So I wanted to kind of touch back on what we talked about last week with some more of the Whipple tree testing. So on the left here is when the Phoenix hand, about the size 1.3, was tensioned at about 30 degrees. We got some clear impressions of the first two fingers, but then the other two fingers, we didn't get to see quite as much, but there is a grip in there, and you can see just tentative impressions. The other hand was, we tensioned it between, somewhere between like 35 and 45 degrees. It was some sort of kind of mix in there. Then we found much better impressions. We got the last two fingers to impress a little bit more deeply, but then also got very, very clear finger impressions of the first two fingers. So we found that the Whipple tree does a little bit better with when it's tensioned at about 45 degrees, but we'll see in a little bit with some of our other therapy testing, the Whipple tree does quite well with other shaped objects. So I know that was a bit of a topic last week about how the Whipple tree did, but so we retested the hands from before and found similar results around 30 degrees, but found slightly better results at that number that was between about 35 to 45 degrees. So we started some therapeutic testing with a couple different shapes, and the first shape was this sphere here. It was just very easily rolled, and this is the general shape that the putty was pressed into, and because we were using that 2 ounces the whole time, the shape was about the same diameter about every time. So we're going to start with the Raptor Reloaded with a 3-pin tensioner. On the left, you can see very faint impressions about 30 degrees. And it's hard because the lighting, these are taken at 2 different times of day. That's why the photos look so different. So the lighting makes it a little difficult to see, but this has been uploaded to the sandbox, so you can zoom in on your own if you'd like to see it another time. But the Raptor Reloaded hand did much better when it was tensioned at 45 degrees. You can see clear impressions of each of the 4 fingers, although there is no thumb impression on either of the 2 spheres. And then the Phoenix with the 3-pin tensioner, you can see a little bit better of the actually middle 2 fingers here. There's a slight pinky impression here and a index finger impression over here, slight thumb impression here. But then it was retension at 45 degrees. We actually got really good imprints of the 4 of the 5 fingers, but no real thumb imprint was made. This little mark down here was actually my finger when I was trying to pry it off the hand, so that doesn't actually relate to anything. The therapy just was very pliable. And so then we did the Phoenix with the Whipple tree, and we can see 3 of the 4 fingers made relatively good impressions. The pinky was pretty faint. I think also just the way the pinky had curled down, it may have missed the therapy right as we were doing the impressions. But then when it was retention at about 45 degrees, we can see pretty clear impressions. This Phoenix with the Whipple tree is really gripping onto that sphere pretty well, and I was pretty pleased to see that. And so it seems that the extra tensioning seemed just to get a little bit more of the impression here. Then we molded it into a kind of conical shape, and so this left side, the widest side, was first impressed on the side of the hand that had the pinky. So the pinky would grab onto this wide side initially. All of our hands were right hands, and so then we just flipped the shape, which we'll see in a little bit. And we can see pretty clear impressions when it's been tensioned around that at that 45-degree mark. Against the lighting, it's harder to see the impressions, but we did get impressions on the therapy when it was tensioned at about 30 degrees. They just weren't as clear as the 45 degrees. Same thing with the Phoenix and the 3-pin tensioner, although this one did have pretty clear impressions of each of the fingers, especially the pinky and the ring finger. It's just because they came in contact with the putty at first, and I just don't think that there was just enough height in the putty for the first 2 fingers to really grip onto it. But when it was tensioned at 45 degrees, we started to see actual surface area differences. The pinky and ring fingers really did seem to dig into that putty, as well as much better grip with the first two fingers. Then the Phoenix with the Whipple Tree, we got some good action with the ring finger especially, and then also the pinky. The pinky kind of dug in there instead of being a more widespread pattern. The tip of the pinky seemed to kind of just dig into the theraputty, which was a great grip. And then the first two fingers were not as severely impressed into the putty. So then when it was tensioned at about 45 degrees, we again saw some really good last two finger impressions and some good grip with the first two, although the impressions were not made as deeply. Then we flipped the shape around so that the first two fingers would have the wider, thicker side of the putty. And this is what we found with the putty, is that the fingers were able to grip onto the shape, but didn't make any surface area changes, didn't really make any severe indentations, not like I expected. But then this 45 degrees seemed to make some pretty good impressions, especially with the first two fingers. And then with the Phoenix hands, we actually will see this kind of pinching action more so than we have in the past. You can also see it here when it's tensioned at 30 degrees. But we saw this really good, clear pinching action, which is, I know, what we like to see from time to time in the hands. And the Whipple Tree also made a really good impression, had that really good pinching action as well. It was actually really hard for me to pry the shape on the left off of the hand. As you can see, it's kind of crooked over here. And that's because the hand really did grip well. The problem with theraputty testing is that the hands may grip onto an object really well, but they may not impress very deeply in and cause dramatic surface area changes. So even though the hand is gripping the putty well, it's securely inside the hand, we may not see any serious impressions going on. But each hand did well throughout the testing, but I really was impressed with both Phoenix hands with this conical shape towards the end. And then we did kind of it was an attempt at a football shape. It was more kind of just a funny egg shape at the end. It was really difficult for me to make. So it was kind of more of a oval shape at the end. But this is what we found with this particular shape. The wrapped reloaded hand did really well with the 45-degree angle tensioning. Again, each of the shapes were anchored in the hands very well. It's just that they weren't really digging into the putty. Same with the Phoenix 3-pin tensioner. We can see clear impressions on both ends of the spectrum, although we can see more surface area changes with the 3-pin tensioner at 45 degrees. And then the Whipple Tree did really well, although we saw quite a bit of a ring finger imprint. It seemed to extend over more so than the first two fingers did on both ends. So the Whipple Tree kind of wasn't that evenly distributed with this particular shape, but as we saw earlier, this is a really nice even distribution, a really nice pinching action. So it seemed that the Whipple Tree did really well with that conical shape. So overall, the Phoenix hand with the 3-pin tensioner appeared to grip the best when tensioned at 45 degrees out of really the hands there, although the Whipple Tree was a very close second. I just saw a little bit more of the surface area changes, and the putty was actually thinner because it had spread out farther than it did with the Whipple Tree, although it was hardly noticeable, especially in these photos. It's kind of hard to tell at times. Each hand made the deepest impression when tensioned at 45 degrees, and the tensioning angles, however, made really good impressions. Even if they're hard to see in photographs, I could see when I was prying them off, each hand actually had to be pulled off of the putty. Each of the fingers were stuck to the putty through each of the impressions. It's easier for the larger hands to hold objects, especially when objects are made of material that doesn't give a whole lot. So that's when we're going to see objects that have a lot less friction associated with them, and that just makes it easier. It's easier for an adult to hold a baseball than it is for a child. Each of the hands held objects with a firmer grip when tensioned at 45 degrees rather than the 30 degrees. And that kind of goes with what we were saying last week about the hands, once in that closed position at neutral, can still be pushed a little bit farther than being at that really hyperflexion at the 30 degrees. Catching objects is still a little difficult, especially with objects that have little give or have like a really smooth surface. Again, that friction and a more pliable surface like Theraputty or those squishy pool balls, you can kind of wring them out in the pool and throw them. Those kind of objects are a lot easier to hold or catch. And I actually did some testing. I don't have photos, but I did some initial functionality testing with a couple of those objects. So throwing objects is definitely going to be doable with practice. This is part of the learning curve when people are going to be given hands. It's going to take a while to learn a couple things, but once you have the form down, you should be able to do a variety of actions. Objects, when they're holding things, or when hands are holding objects, the thumb actually really wasn't used because the hand wasn't in that fully closed position. So at best, the thumb is going to help kind of balance objects or keep them inside the palm, but they're not actually assisting in the holding object action. And this can be seen in some of the Theraputty testing earlier slides where we really didn't see a whole lot of thumb action in the impressions. Both Phoenix and Raptor Reloaded hands were able to hold a variety of objects. We used a small football, not the traditional size, but essentially like a little kid play football, that pool ball I mentioned, the stress balls. They're each able to hold the hands secure or hold the objects securely. Heavier objects, depending on the strength of the user, may be more difficult to hold for extended periods of time. That's a lot like stress balls if they're heavy, or maybe hand weights if they were to use those. That goes along with the rehab process. It's going to be more difficult for people to hold objects until their muscles are strong enough to support those actions. So I'm going to get off of the screen share and wrap up a little bit. I'm trying to stop sharing. Oh, there we go. Okay, so on the final note, the Whipple trees really make a difference in some of the oddly shaped objects. So they make much better impressions when it comes to things that aren't traditionally shaped. We saw a little bit of weakness when it comes to those small, really narrow cylinders, but those oddly shaped objects like that conical shape I made, the Whipple tree did really, really, really well. We're not sure if there's a significant improvement over the 3-pin tensioner. We're going to do a little bit more testing and keep you noted, but initially what I saw when I was doing some testing was that the 3-pin may have done a little better, but again, we're going to keep monitoring this and see if wear and tear really plays on this factor. We also saw tentatively that the Whipple tree gives a more even distribution when using heavier or stiffer Theraputties, which is a part of the Whipple tree design, is that it's supposed to be better at evenly distributing the forces with heavier or stiffer objects. So we're going to keep testing some of the objects, play around the shape of the objects, and also the firmness of the putty to see if the Whipple tree can in fact overtake the 3-pin tensioner, which I think is what we're expecting to see. And we're also going to calibrate the input and the output forces, the measurement technique that we're going to use this week for the range of sizes. So you should keep an eye out for that in the future. But other than that, that's what we have from this week. And so if anybody has any questions, feel free. But we'll keep you posted with whatever happens next week.
No, that sounds really, really good. It sounds like you did some great things. I'd be interested in results on things like cans and glasses and mugs, larger cylindrical objects, which I don't know if you can maybe like wrap a thin layer of Theraputty around an object like that and see what you get.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, I was actually thinking of that to see how it grips on firmer objects. So that is in the thought process, and I think we can definitely work something out like that and play around with the stiffness of the putty. But that is on the list, so I'm going to try and get through most, if not all, the functionality testing this next week or week and a half. But I'll make sure to star that so that way we can get that information out to you.
That'd be fantastic. Okay, does anybody else have anything for Tricia? If not, Garrett, you ready?
Okay.
Okay.
So you guys can hear me, right?
We can hear you.
All right. So I'm going to screen share and just show you what I've been doing on Fusion. Been modeling a lot more. Basically, can you guys see my screen now?
Yep, we can.
Alright, so basically I've been working on just some ways to eliminate the need for screws on the Phoenix hand, like I said before. I was showing you guys clips before it got a little complicated because thermoforming the clips and making it bend got a little difficult. There's too many variables I couldn't control. So I came up with another design where instead of so basically this is the palm mesh. So I cut off part of it so you guys could see that that basically that it just slides in here, and
Oh, that's
then
cool.
there's two of these pins. There's actually a pin right here. Oh, no, wrong one. Pin right here that goes into this little slot right here, and then you twist it, and it sits in here, and I'll keep it from sliding out. And that was my proposed solution to it. I printed one out, and then I also had a little trouble with this 90 degrees over here, because when it's flat, printed flat like this, I didn't really have any experience with printing this. So this flat part right here was kind of droopy, and then the printer had some problems printing this. So I modeled in my own support system right there. So that supports the edge of it, and then the printer has a place to bridge the gap between here and here, and the print was considerably cleaner with the support material in. So I thought that was pretty promising, and still working on some issues because when you're thermoforming this, it's hard to heat up this mesh without heating up this edge, and then when this edge gets a little soft, then it's easier to slip out. So as of now, it clicks in really nicely, but it's a little difficult when it gets malleable. So I also revisited the clips. So this is the clips that I was working on, and let's suppress this, and so you can see the whole thing. And yeah, basically I did a test with this instead. So the clips I showed you before, this is it integrated into the hand, and it clicks pretty nicely. But again, like getting to bend this 90 degrees really nicely is a little difficult. I tried making. Sorry. I tried making it a little simpler by putting in putting in this little groove on the side so that this would heat up and bend up really nicely. Because if we print it straight up, then the alignments of the filament make it a little weaker. So to preserve strength, we should print it flat, and it'll also make it simpler for people to print. So that was pretty much it. Working on like a snap pin design right now, just prototyping, so hasn't been integrated into the palm yet. But this would be just in replacement of screws. The holes would be a little different, and instead of it, we'll just have this like a snap pin instead of screws. So just another way to make it simpler for people and easier for people to use. And yeah, so that was the workflow for this week. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thermoforming of the mesh, and then I think that was the problem with the clips initially. I like the idea of that sliding in. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was what
Yeah,
I was
I really like that.
trying
That's
to
really
do.
cool.
Yeah. So yeah, and then yeah, it's just easier to put together too, because instead of like having to like screw on all these little holes, you just kind of slide it in and just clip it in. Be cool.
Yeah, no, it's nifty. I like it.
So yeah, that was the work for this week.
Let me ask, if it's easier to put together, but if something breaks, is it more or equally difficult to kind of take apart and replace pieces?
Yeah, that's the thing. So again, I'm still dialing in on the clearances because right now it's really easy to slide in, and then taking it out is a little bit of a problem though.
Yeah.
But hopefully it'll get to the point where it doesn't break and it'll just be easy. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm not sure if you can see, but on the side of this design, there's like a kind of like a notch that's kind of thin though. So that's the only problem. Over here, this is to keep it from slipping out while I thermoform it, this little groove right here. But then the problem is that this area gets pretty thin, and then when it heats up, then it's kind of flexible, and it's very difficult to use as of now. But
Right.
I'll keep working on it, and hopefully get something.
I think it's a good direction. It's really cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
I really like it. I think it's got some real potential.
All right.
Very good. Stephen, did you want to update on anything that Jessica's working on? I know she's not able to join us. She's actually gone to work with a recipient today, right?
Yes, so she went on a little road trip, and she's going to be doing some fitting. Jessica, together with Grip, she's been making terminal pieces for the playful prosthetic. So I think the recipient requested something to play basketball, frisbee, and something to catch a football. And as far as I know, they created kind of a basketball hoop device. They're working on the frisbee device, and they brought a book holder with them, which is less exciting, I'm sure, but probably useful. And then she's going to do fitting for the actual forearm and bicep part for the prototype she's been working on.
It'll be good to hear from her next week to see how that went and see what she's got. So that'll be good.
She's been doing well.
And then this week we've got Akil and Chris are actually going to, they've been working with Dr. Gloria Gogol at Shriners Hospital, and they actually have a visit out at Shriners today. So they should have some information for us tomorrow. So does anybody have anything else? If not, okay, we are a little short this week, but we will be back next week with some more updates. Until then, happy printing. Bye-bye, everybody.